1985 was not just another year for action movies. It was an arms race. Muscles and guns got bigger, explosions got louder, and suddenly ninjas were showing up in every video store. Stallone was mowing down armies. Schwarzenegger was teaching us how to shop for rocket launchers, and Canon Films on their own was pumping out enough action movies to fill up an entire weekend marathon. So in this video, I'm going to show you why 1985 was the best year for action movies ever. Now, if you grew up in the 80s, you'll remember a time when action movies stopped just being genre films and suddenly started becoming cultural events. And it's because you could say the mid-80s was a perfect storm. Peak Reagan-era bravado, dwindling Cold War tension, the rise of VHS, the expansion of cable TV, and the fact that audiences couldn't get enough larger-than-life heroes, and 1985 would deliver a buffet of them for fans to choose from. So my pitch here for this video is simple. 1985 was the most stacked, most star-studded, most variety-packed year for action movies of all time. Not because every film was a masterpiece, because trust me, you'll see as we dive into this video, many of these movies are not. Instead, I think it's because in 1985, the action genre would splinter itself into these perfect little aisles to give audiences everything we wanted, and even more so, some things we didn't even know we wanted. Of course, we had the theatrical juggernauts led by the Stallone versus Arnold rivalry, but on top of that, we were treated to vigilantes, spies, adventure romps, Hong Kong chaos, dojo dreams, late night cable weirdness, sci-fi action grit, plenty of fantasy and swords, and there's no denying 1985 was the peak of the one-man army era. So today we're going to hit all the action categories and just explore the impressive range this single year of action cinema would deliver. We're kicking things off in the curbside justice aisle. This was the city is broken, so I'm going to fix it by myself lane, where the streets were lean, the streets were mean, the rules were optional, and usually the heroes solved problems with grit, a glare, and frequently heavy artillery. Now, Vigilante Action in 85 was raw and direct, pretty much the action genre wearing steel-toe work boots. Death Wish 3 would turn Bronson's Paul Kersey into a one-man neighborhood watch. It's grimy, loud, and absolutely unbothered by nuance, and the result is one of the most notorious just wish fulfillment action sequels ever. It's endlessly rerun, endlessly quoted, and somehow still a comfort watch for anybody who grew up on late night cable justice.
Charles Bronson, Death Wish 3.
And then Code of Silence would show up with Chuck Norris playing it straighter and more grounded, less cartoon and more street-level tension. This one was cops versus criminals versus corruption, with Norris surprisingly as the calm center of the storm. And I think with this movie, you really could feel the era shifting toward tougher, more procedural action that still knew how to deliver a clean, crunchy action set piece.
Chuck Norris. Code of Silence.
Now, we've just rumbled through the dirty, grimy city streets, so for this next category, let's clean up, let's straighten our ties, and step into the world where trouble usually comes with a passport and a hefty gadget budget. To me, this category in 1985 was action cinema with a wink and a toy box, the slick and sneaky lane where danger came dressed to impress, villains always had elaborate plans, and the gadgets were so fun that you wish you had them all at home to play with. Now, I think most would agree that spy action overall in 1985 was slick, super playful, and definitely gadget happy. I think Spy and Gadget Adjacent was Remo Williams, a solid movie about a wisecracking action hero learning mystical powers. I think it's training montages and high concept confidence and just big swing energy just made the 80s feel like the 80s. I mean, even when it gets goofy, I think this is the fun kind of goofy, despite not bringing enough energy to power up a new franchise, unfortunately. And then Gotcha would slide in as a college kid spy fantasy, mixing up campus energy with Cold War paranoia. It's just a movie that has that breezy mid-80s confidence where the stakes are definitely real, but the movie still wants you to have some fun getting chased through them. The tone bounces between spring break comedy and wait, are we actually in danger action? And honestly, that whiplash is kind of part of the charm.
The regular James Bond, man.
Yeah, except James Bond had pussy galore. I can't even get a date.
Then there was A View to a Kill, which was Bond doing a late era victory lap. It's a full strength time capsule of just mid 80s pop action with big locations and big set pieces and a villain scheme that sounds like it was pitched on a napkin at a power lunch. And I mean, really, even if you can feel the Moore era nearing the end of the road here, the movie still has that cool Bond energy. Okay, with that category in the books, we're going to toss the gadgets back in the drawer because this next aisle is just a pure globe-trotting fun where the action comes with treasure maps, close calls, and over-the-top journeys. But before we do that, let me know down in the comments, what was your adventure flavor go-to? Was it the treasure hunting, the romance, adventure, time travel? Drop your answers down in the comments. All right, guys, grab your compass and your popcorn because 1985 also loved action with big locations, bigger personalities, and the kind of international chaos that I think played perfectly either on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon. Adventure action in 1985 is what you watched when you wanted danger fueled on ambitious fun. Now, adventure escapades in 85 absolutely thrived on breezy thrills and big stakes. There was King Solomon's Mines, which was pure pulp. It's goofy in a way that feels intentional, more comic book safari than gritty expedition, and that's kind of the appeal. The action isn't about intensity, it's about variety, a parade of hazards and close calls and endless banter. The tone is bright, these stakes are simple, and the whole thing plays like a rental era comfort watch. There was also Jewel of the Nile, another movie that just kept the charm and chaos machine rolling, this one leaning much more into the romance, the bickering, and the globe-trotting peril as opposed to the jaw-dropping action. This movie is much more about the adventure date movie rhythm with funny friction, sexual tension, big locations, and just enough danger to keep the plot sprinting. This movie is not trying to be gritty, it's trying to be a good time, and it succeeds by being relaxed and confident about itself.
I gotta go! And if I gotta go, you gotta go.
Silverado would also ride in with pure Western swagger and real filmmaking muscle, taking the classic genre shootout thrills and giving them a modern ensemble sparkle. To me, this is one of those movies where the action feels very clean and satisfying, not just loud. You get tense standoffs, good chases, and gunfights that are staged with clarity, plus the cast kind of plays like a future Hall of Fame roster. I mean, even if you're not a Western person, this movie just has that crowd pleaser energy that kind of reminds you that the Western action genre can be straight up fun when done properly. All right, guys, I hope you're still with me because now that we've done big horizons and spy flicks and big movie star adventures, let's jump across the Pacific because at this time the action genre over there was moving like it was powered by rocket fuel. But first, I got a question for all of you. What was the first Hong Kong action movie you remember seeing, and what did you think of it? Drop it down in the comments. As I mentioned, for this next category, we're hopping overseas to what I consider to be the action laboratory, where choreography was always razor sharp, stunts were more than fearless, and the genre basically evolved right in front of our eyes, because this is the area of 85 action where the stunts started looking so insane they felt like they were defying gravity. 1985 would also be the year action went international. Police Story was Jackie Chan at peak. I will risk my skeleton for your entertainment, mixing comedy, chaos, and action choreography that felt like physics had gotten rewired. I mean, these set pieces are legendary for a reason. They're not just dangerous, they're inventive, just built around real spaces and real objects. Like, the environment itself is part of the fight, and watching it now you can feel how far ahead of its time it really was, because the action has clarity, rhythm, and personality, not just noise. Then in The Protector we'd get a different Jackie Chan flavor, a cross-cultural action experiment that's rougher around the edges and a bit more standard action in its approach. It doesn't have the same joyful precision as Police Story, but that's kind of what makes it interesting. It shows you what happens when you take a stunt wizard and hand him someone else's rule book. There's still some heat in it for sure, still flashes of what made Chan Chan, but you also feel the tug of war between styles. And then there was Yes Madam. I mean, pure lightning in a bottle was this movie. This is the kind of movie that made you sit up because the action had authority and impact. Michelle Yeoh and Cynthia Rothrock didn't just look cool, they looked and were capable, and the choreography was staged with a clean, confident clarity that just made every hit feel earned and just look legit. And it's really a big reason why this era of Hong Kong cinema felt so influential in the genre overall. Okay, now that we've just watched stunts that look like they should have come with a warning label, now let's take things back stateside, where the dojos were loud, they were vibrant, ninjas were everywhere, and VHS shelves were doing flying kicks right at your face.
For 2,000 years, the sacred art of the ninja has been guarded in the East.
Now, there's no denying that movies in the States back in 1985 were also themselves riding a martial arts glow up. I think American Ninja was the ninja boom hitting full stride on pure Canon Films confidence, the kind of movie that just kind of felt like it was assembled in a lab using three simple ingredients: stealth, kicks, and a plot that exists mostly to point you towards the next fight scene. Then The Last Dragon rolled in like a neon dream with a black belt. Part kung fu movie, part music video, part New York fairy tale, and it committed so hard to its own mythology that you just nodded along like it all made sense regardless. Then Pray for Death would take a darker turn, serving ninja revenge with that late night seriousness that we all loved. This was the tape you put on when you wanted the martial arts aisle with the lights off and the mood set to a little more dangerous. And then, like a bolt of cinematic lightning wearing a leotard, Jim Cotta would show up on the scene. I mean, this movie is what happens when someone says, what if we combined martial arts with gymnastics and then dropped the hero into a murder village obstacle course? I mean, it's absurd, it's oddly sincere, it's unforgettable in both good and bad ways. It's the 80s version of Hunger Games, and it's the exact kind of movie that just makes you grateful the 80s had no fear when it came to movie making. All right, guys, now that we've kicked our way through the martial arts aisle, it's time for the movies that you discovered by accident at 1 a.m. and somehow watched all the way through to the end. Now, be honest, what was the weirdest movie you ever finished late at night on cable simply because it was on? Bang it up in the comments because I'm dying to know your guys' picks. Now, to me, this next category is the you didn't plan on watching this, but you've gone too far to just pull out now section. We're swerving through down to the bottom glorious shelves of the video store where the budgets are low, the confidence is shockingly high, and every movie feels like it's been discovered by accident. On the late night cable aisle came Avenging Angel, a neon-soaked vigilante sequel with that after midnight B-movie grindhouse mood. It's gritty and pulpy, relatively cheesy, and it operates just on pure genre trope momentum and stripper glitter, resulting in a late night ride that delivers an abundance of surprisingly delightful 80s violence.
When you get to hell, tell him an angel sent you.
And then there was also Andy Sedaris's Malibu Express, a movie that pulled up like it owned the frickin' cable schedule. Pure B or maybe C movie sleaze with action seasoning. It's goofy, it's comically raunchy, it's shameless, and weirdly enjoyable because it's not trying to be classy, it's trying to be entertaining, and it commits to the bit so convincingly that growing up as a kid, I wanted to grow my own Cody Abilene mustache.
Would I help any woman in distress? Yes, ma'am, I would.
And then the little hidden gem today called Miami Super Cops dropped in, bringing sun-baked Euro crime flavor, all swagger and speeding cars. This movie is bright and loud and happily ridiculous. It's the kind of late night pick where the vibe is half the point. You get palm trees, punchlines, and enough horsepower and comedic charm to remind you how entertained you can be when the material is mindlessly clever. All right, guys, I hope you're still with me. That's been a long video. If you are, I appreciate you. From here, we're cranking the dial up into the future where the action in 1985 got stranger, the stakes got bigger, the lasers got deadlier, and even the settings could kill. Now, our next stop on this ride through 1985 action cinema takes us to the future where neon meets paranoia. Lasers are practically required, you never know what kind of weapons you're gonna get, and tomorrow comes complete with a contemporary wasteland decor and wildly eccentric character. Action movies would also get plenty of science fiction flavoring back in 1985. Enemy Mine was action sci-fi with a surprise emotional uppercut. On paper, it's a two enemies crash land and try to survive setup, but the movie quickly turns into this tense, funny, and oddly moving survival story where hostility slowly gets replaced by understanding. It has real stakes, real atmosphere, and it leaves you thinking about empathy and language and friendship forged under pressure, which is a pretty wild trick for an action-adjacent sci-fi flick to pull off back in 1985. And then would come Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, a big, loud, desert landmark adventure movie that pushed the franchise deep into full-on myth mode with bigger spectacle and a broader, almost fairy tale scale. It's certainly not as raw or as good as The Road Warrior, but it definitely had its own moments that permanently stamped the film into the culture. I mean, none bigger than the Thunderdome itself, a concept so iconic it turned into everyday shorthand for chaos. The movie also helped lock in the idea that post-apocalyptic action could be operatic and crowd-pleasing and weirdly emotional all at once. Now, since we've already ventured way off the farm of normalcy, let's take it a step even further into the cinematic fantasy land of 1985, where the rules felt like they were made up on the fly, the swords were always shiny, and the fog machines always felt like they were working overtime. Since it was going every other direction, action movies in 1985 would also venture deep into quests and curses and larger-than-life villains where the cover art alone was often better than the movie, because fantasy action in 1985 was all about the capes, the vibes, the sorcery, the costumes, the dramatic synth music, and plenty of medieval castles. There was Red Sonja, a Conan-adjacent sword and sorcery spectacle built like a comic book cover come to life, bold poses, big quests, and that glorious 80s fog machine budget atmosphere. It's scrappy, colorful, and more about the vibe than the perfection, the kind of action fantasy movie you remember as a poster, even if the movie itself wobbled like a car with one uneven tire. And then Lady Hawk would slide in with real storybook muscle, romantic and mythic, with that sweeping, cursed lover's energy that just made it feel like a fairy tale for teens who also wanted some sword fights. It was sincere in a way you just don't see as often anymore, and it's one of those 80s movies people don't just watch, they revisit so they can go back to the 80s again. Another childhood favorite of mine was Ewoks: The Battle for Endor. I mean, this was the TV movie adventure that quietly raised a generation of kids, where the stakes felt surprisingly real for a story involving teddy bear warriors. It just had that undeniable Sunday afternoon on the couch comfort to it, but with enough peril to make it all mean something. But the adventure genre wasn't done, because then there was The Adventures of Hercules with Lou Ferrigno showing up as pure canon films, movie myth chaos, big muscle, a bigger ambition, and a dream logic version of the ancient legend powered by smoke, lightning, cheesy effects, and an unshakable confidence in spite of its parade of comical flaws. Alright guys, now that we've battled curses, swung swords, and survived pure 80s imagination, it's time for the final boss isle, the one-man army era, where action heroes stopped being dudes and started being natural disasters. And before we get into it, you guys gotta tell me, who is your ultimate one-man army hero and what movie proved it to you? Now, if you want a snapshot of peak 80s action swagger, this is it. This is the heavy artillery section, where one hero does the work of an entire task force, ignores every warning sign, and still finds time to drop a one-liner before all the smoke clears. Now, one-man army action in 1985, I think, was the genre going supernova. There was Invasion USA with Chuck Norris serving as a homeland defense bulldozer. It was blunt force entertainment built around the fantasy of a single unstoppable hero who solved problems the way a wrecking ball solves architecture. The movie doesn't do subtle, it does maximum, and it has that unmistakable canon era flavor to it that just adds to the charm. Chuck, however, was not done with 85. He had quite the busy year. He also delivered Missing in Action 2, which would tap into the era's POW MIA wave, but with a grittier, meaner edge. I mean, even as it leans into its pulp storytelling, it carries that heavy, determined tone that just defined a whole run of mid-80s action, where revenge and rescue were basically twin engines. It's not as pop iconic as Rambo or as quote happy as Commando, but it belongs in this category because it's part of the same just cultural current. The one-man army as a mission, as a myth, and as an unstoppable forward motion. And then there was Commando, which was basically Arnold at maximum speed. It plays like the greatest hits album of artillery, quips, and forward momentum. I mean, the plot in this one is essentially a straight line drawn with a rocket launcher, and looking back, that's kind of the beauty of it. The movie never stalls. It just keeps escalating, and it's also insanely rewatchable because it treats action like comedy, timing every beat like a punchline and every punchline like an action beat. And I think the legacy is so permanent because it's one of those movies where the quotes became folklore and the just vibe overall became the blueprint for fun one-man army cinema.
You're a funny guy, Sully. That's why I'm going to kill you last.
And then, helping their rivalry take shape, Stallone would drop Rambo 2. This was the moment the genre went from action movie to action myth. It would take the wounded drifter from the first film and turned him into a one-man mission statement with biceps, exploding arrow tips, and it's really hard to overstate how much this sequel just rewired the action template. Bigger set pieces, higher body counts, more spectacle, all delivered with the kind of 80s confidence that didn't ask permission. I mean, whether you loved it for the spectacle or side-eyed it for the volume, it helps turn Rambo into a cultural synonym for one-person war, and basically the genre would spend the rest of the decade trying to chase that same kind of larger-than-life impact. So yeah, 1985 wasn't just a good year, it was an action sampler platter with zero filler. Whether you wanted gritty streets, gadget glam, treasure hunts, Hong Kong stunt wizardry, ninja nonsense, cable chaos, sci-fi grit, fantasy quests, or heroes who treated an entire army like a warm-up, this was the year cinema brought the whole damn menu to your options. Now I want to kick it back to you guys. Drop me a comment with your personal 1985 action MVP. What was the movie you watched and rewound until the tape started wearing thin? Also, before you guys jump out, if you enjoyed this retro deep dive and you want more videos, you can swing over to my Friday Night Rentals playlist for 80s gems, or over to my VHS Vault list for plenty of 90s movies videos as well. And if 1985 isn't the best year for action in your mind, let me know down in the comments what year you think surpassed it. And lastly, if you haven't done so yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next trip down memory lane. Like this video if you did, drop me a comment. Your engagement really does help the channel more than you realize. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching my videos. I really do appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's been a video I've been wanting to make for a good while now, so it feels good to have it up for you guys. I hope to see you all back for the next one here at Sunset Video, where movies never say die.
Jack Burton and the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Survive a war, you gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?